Oh, no, it's getting there. It's getting better. Guidelines, nice guidelines, need to change your policies,
Yeah.
which we've got to review in 2022. There's no mention, believe it or not, for fathers on nice guidelines. No screening yet for all parents. And so when you think the biggest killer in men under 50 is suicide, it's actually shocking that we found research that up to 47 times more risk of suicide fathers are during the perinatal period.
Yeah.
Which is mad. Up to, so that's a dual diagnosis, but up to 20% more risk from being a non-father. So this is really important that we should be looking at.
Absolutely. I mean, my personal experience was that, I went through some pretty traumatic experiences having my children, the first birth and the third birth. And not only did I struggle with that myself, because I don't actually remember anybody asking me if I was okay, but flipping that coin and seeing how my husband had to manage not only the trauma that he'd experienced himself witnessing what was going on, but also having to hold it together and be there for us in such strange, alienating circumstances. Really, there's nothing that can kind of prepare you. It's suddenly like, wow, hang on a minute, and everything on his shoulders. And talking to him over the years, he reflects on how helpless he felt.
Yeah.
And how nobody asked, not only me if I was okay, but they definitely didn't think to ask if he was okay. It was just expected of him to be okay, to manage not only a job, a full-time job, but a wife that was so tearful and so far from herself, and a baby with colic, and we had reflux, and we had all sorts of things, and it was really, really tough for him. And I talk about it to him now, and I say, how did you feel? And he said, well, to be honest, I blocked it, I don't remember, but I know that I felt really, really helpless. And I had nowhere to go to reach out. And that's why, the work that you're doing, and you call it Fathers Reaching Out, don't you? Which is just great, because there is so much stigma around reaching out as well.
Definitely.
I mean, how do you go about talking to dads about reaching out?
Yeah, I think obviously during the first year of fatherhood, it was the loneliest time in my life. Honestly, I was my personality changed. I was drinking when my mother-in-law came down. I had a lot of family support when my wife was in crisis, because she was in crisis team. Another thing that people are not aware of, I actually campaigned for the mother baby in Wales, because my wife should have had a mother baby unit. Basically looking, that's another, I was trying to support her, then the lack of sleep. I didn't know at the time I had an undiagnosed disorder called ADHD as well. So you self-managed that all my life without knowing. Lack of sleep, witnessing trauma, my wife, thinking my wife and baby's going to die. Then you expect they could go back to work in 2 weeks. Then I was off work for 6 months with no pay, self-employed, mortgage to pay, credit cards. So I suppressed all these feelings, and then it came out in anger as well, So yeah, my personality totally changed in that postnatal period, as I say. So it wasn't until years later where I had a breakdown, and I spoke to another father in a gym, and he went through a similar experience to me as well, So it was only to support fathers with their partners with postnatal depression.
Yeah.
But what I found was sometimes it's only the dad who was struggling, and it was impacting on mum's mental health.
Yeah. There is that other side, isn't it? Yeah.
The relationships, failing as well,
Right. So, I mean, firstly, how do we encourage more partners and dads to reach out? Because there is that stigma, isn't there? That there is some kind of, you're weak, you're, and we see it in the media a lot. That, I was watching Normal People the other day, and there was a scene where the guy he'd been depressed, and he'd gone to a therapist, and he was being teased by his mates back at home because of that, and so this still goes on. And so, that this stigma around talking about the fact that you are mentally feeling unbalanced in whatever way that is, how do we go about reaching out to dads and partners and saying to them, it's okay. You can reach out. Nobody's going to bite you, and we're definitely not going to think that you're weak. But how do we get people to believe that? Because there's a difference, isn't it? It's the
Yeah,
we're
definitely,
here,
definitely.
and then that. But people saying, well, how is this going to affect me? How is it going to affect my life? I better just bury it deep down, and I better just drink more, and I better just, use all those negative coping strategies that I have that have been working for me for years in order to be able to manage this. And of course, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? So what do you say? What would you say?
Yeah, like I said, when avoiding situations, overworking, all these are negative coping skills. But like you said, there's good resources out there. Obviously, the NHS helplines out there now, and maternal mental health, as we know, has grown in the last 10 years. But
Yeah.
and more mums are talking about we need more fathers to speak out as well, because they make the conversation normal as well. It is so common. 1 in 10 fathers suffering from postnatal depression.
Yeah.
NCT did a report that 38% of fathers were concerned about their mental health.
Yeah.
And in 2018, 39% of young fathers wanted support for their mental health. So, this is huge numbers. So it is common. And I always say to any fathers listening, the quicker you get the help, the quicker the recovery is. Don't worry what other people think, because your most important is yourself and your family members. So don't worry whatever. It's going to change. It's going to change, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think also there is the fact that so many people live with high levels of anxiety these days, and we're also expected to manage so much more on our own, that we kind of get used to our normal is kind of up here. And I think that's what happens to so many people, and that's what stops them from reaching out as well, because they think, oh well, we're used to this, we're okay. But of course, what they don't understand is that the more you pile on, of course,
Yeah.
there's going to be a breaking point. She's going to blow. And so, yes, like you say, there are lifelines, numbers to call. But in my experience, what people find the hardest thing to do is to actually pick up the phone and do that, because they're saying, oh, well, it'll get better tomorrow. It'll get better next week. This is just a phase. This is just I can manage this. I can cope. So, what do we say to people? How do we re-educate people to say, to actually take that step? Because that's the hardest step, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I suffered in years thinking it would be okay tomorrow. And to the point where I was getting suicidal thoughts. Loads of things were happening during that time. And I think what I look at a bit now, I found positive coping skills as well. I spoke to a therapist. I had a fantastic, one of the big fathers say, oh, it doesn't work. Try a different counselor. You might not get that rapport. What works for me might not work for you either. So what works for me is mindfulness, CBT, walking, and in all these positive coping skills, which I should have had in school, really. So we've got to be educating people early on, and I think mental health early prevention should start during pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was particularly my driving force with creating the Beyond Birth Guide, and for me it was important that we cover the perinatal period, being for both if there are two in the relationship, obviously, but for both, and also for parents and carers and anybody that is directly caring for a baby. It's so important to reflect on your mental well-being, your mental state, and understanding how it's going to be. So you're building your resilience. You're learning that there are lifelines out there to call if you start to feel wobbly. That the communication that you have with your partner is so important. That you are both going to change. This transformation is huge, and it is a shock. It may be very, very beautiful. Don't get me wrong, there are going to be elements where it's just amazing, but there are also elements where you will see the ugliest side of yourself and of your partner and feel more vulnerable than ever. And so this Beyond Birth Guide is for both mother and
which
father,
is fantastic.
partner, because it's about sitting together and kind of working through some stuff, which can be uncomfortable. And I found, people, the resistance is really strong with doing this. isn't it? It's like, I know it's going to help me, so therefore I'm not sure if I want to go there yet. And that's the hard part, isn't it? It's not easy. It's
No,
work.
definitely not. It definitely not. And like you said, my mental health, I'm still looking after it now, 10 years on, nearly 10 years since I was in, and I think I was never diagnosed with any sort of postnatal depression or PTSD. But if I was screened, I would have definitely, or I opened up, I would have been, like, for instance, what I know now. But yeah, I think if you've got a past history of anxiety, and like I mentioned, a lot of dads and mums got bipolar, schizophrenia, clinical depression, ASD, ADHD before they become parents. So, then they put the lack of sleep on top of that. That's going to impact on your mental health, massively, So it's about make sure you get all the support in place before you become a parent as well, which is now a good way of thinking as
It
well.
is, isn't it?
Preparing
It
yourself.
is. We could bring it back to kind of life skills anyway, couldn't we? Just learning how to manage your mental well-being long term. All of this is relevant. It's just it's heightened, isn't it? It's bigger in terms of the emotions that are brought in when you are becoming a parent for all of those reasons. But
Definitely.
I think, yeah, and the more that we can educate people as they're younger, and so therefore, of course, all the work that we're doing is for our children, because ultimately they're the ones that are affected by how we are. So much, and I know you've seen that.
Absolutely.
I see that, and the more we can model certain behaviors to our children, the more they will then have much more resilience in terms of how they respond emotionally, and the psychological impact of that long term for them. So it's not just thinking about ourselves, is it?
No, exactly. And we know ourselves, our first 1,001 critical days is so important, you know what I mean? And, our skin to skin, if you're in dance, get your chest out, that oxytocin release,
Oh,
a
love
bond
it.
attachment is so important, as well. So, it's my work has always been more holistic approach, because as people know, in 2011, there was hardly anyone talking about father's mental health. And, and it's about having a more holistic approach, because sometimes, like I said, if mum gets well and dad is struggling, it can impact the mum then. Like, because my wife actually had depression now, she was looking after me now as well. So,
Yeah,
we know about carers fatigue on a lot, as we know. So it's
yeah.
just so important, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, what advice would you give to somebody who is just finding out that they're going to be a dad for the first time? Then what steps would you suggest?
Yeah. There's some really good resources out there. It's not much yet as we like, but so there's like Dad's Matter.
Yeah,
They got Dad's Chat. There's an online app called Dad's AF. There's Dad's Network, which have got thousands of fathers. So you can have those conversations, and they talk about a range of subjects as well. And it's also, it stops that isolation the first year,
mm,
because that's so important. I go back to reports, and even like November did a report last year, 1 in 5 fathers are totally isolated in the
yeah,
first year of fatherhood. So, it's connecting with other fathers. And I don't know if I'm allowed to promote it. It's Dance Pad as well, which I've
yes,
got here.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's little things like this can actually help. And speak to your health visitor. They are there for you as well. If you are struggling, they will talk to you. And it's about opening up those conversations. Have a chat. Don't suppress those feelings. Have those conversations with your partner as well.
yeah,
And if there's any mums watching this as well, as we know it is, if there's any signs to look out for, if your partner is changing, his personality is changing antenatally as well as in the postnatal period,
yeah.
it might be worth having a conversation. Before I forget, there's a big storyline on Emmerdale. On I think Paddy is he's struggling as a father now at the moment. So and it's like I said, it's great to have this awareness and education out there now.
Yeah, I think so, because we are so affected by the media, in terms of what we see as well. And that, that builds up our expectations. And,
Absolutely.
it's important to kind of bring that in, isn't it, really, to understand that, that what we see and read about in the media is not necessarily always going to be our experience. And that, that's where mindfulness comes in so beautifully, because it helps you to be more in the moment, more in the now, more present, more realistic, and managing, those kind of potentially unrealistic or sort of hypothetical ideals that we have, because that often can pull us down very, very fast, can it not? Especially
Absolutely.
if the birth hasn't gone the way you wanted it to, if you're seeing your partner go through a really awful time, those expectations of how you both imagined it to be are instantly blown out of the water. And it's very difficult to pick up the pieces, as you said, when you're very tired and you're feeling vulnerable, and you've got to just keep soldiering on and going back to work and managing. So it's like what you see in the news and on the stories. It's good, follow the stuff that is, a kind of more realistic storyline if you
Yeah.
can. But also coming to the media, the social media side of things, as you showed, Dad Pad. I mean, great stuff coming out now, isn't there? There are kind of all sorts of apps as well. There's Dad AF. Have you
Yeah,
come
that's
across
right.
that one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that again, set up by a dad who'd experienced postpartum depression himself and had not known where to turn,
Yeah.
and had got this app. And on there, he said that the chat that goes on there it's incredible behind the scenes. And I'm thinking, this is kind of a middle ground. This is a bridging the gap, isn't it? It's like saying, you do need to get some help at some point, but if you can open up and communicate and talk, even if it's just to a stranger that you've met on an online forum.
Oh, definitely, massively. So,
Yeah,
and the reason why the other part of the work I'm doing is that in 2016, we set up International Fathers Mental Health Day,
yeah,
which is actually recognised now alongside World Mental Health Day. So that's one of the proudest things. I got a doctor in California who co-founded with me. And now, so it's always a day after Father's Day.
yeah,
And like Maternal Mental Health Week this week, Awareness Week, it's one day where we make sure we flood social media with information on research
yeah,
and stuff, So, and it's a global concern because, I mean, it's massive because, the World Health Organization at present doesn't acknowledge paternal mental health, believe it or not. On their website, you can have a look today. But they do acknowledge the fact that there's 600,000 male suicides every year. And what happens is with dads, because they're not screened and picked up early enough, like mums years ago when I was an advocate for mums, and I used to come across mums who had post-depression 30 years ago, or trauma, birth trauma, they get diagnosed with something else years later. And that's what's happened with dads. They get just diagnosed with depression or anxiety. When you look at the root of the cause, it could possibly be in the perinatal period, if that makes
yeah.
sense,
Yeah, it does. I mean, hopefully the work that you're doing behind the scenes will help to change that, and certainly, yeah, flooding social media is the way to get the message out there. As I think, so many people, especially when they're isolated, look at us all in lockdown, we
I
are
know,
on social
yeah,
media.
yeah.
Um,
And
It's
it's two things with the lockdown, Sophie. It's like I like to see some sort of study, with more dads home now as well. Is that going to have a benefit for that, child's development, and but also the impact of grandparents not being around as well. Can't be able to have so that's a study in itself, is anyone listening? Because
yeah, because we're having to be that nucleus family, and we're not. And our village has kind of vanished in terms of being
yeah,
able to actually physically have them, but then virtually the village is almost more in
yeah,
some ways.
yeah,
And there is a safety that we, in terms of us kind of opening up, but then choosing when we want to in that. And I think that can really help people on a mental level of being able to reach out when you want to and you choose to, rather than, I mean, there is so much to be said, of course, in terms of meeting people face to face in real life, hashtag IRL,
yeah.
but uh, but I think that we can really use this to our advantage, and not to let it all go away once once lockdown is over, to actually keep communicating, keep talking, keep meeting up,
Definitely.
because I know people that are talking to their families way more than they normally would.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. And I think I'm more calmer now than I was a couple of months, weeks ago, because the 16th of March I did my last talk.
Mm,
And the first week, I obviously lost all my work, but I adapted then after that, and I think it just puts me back, walking up the mountains more, looking after myself. What's really important as well, obviously
Yeah.
spending more time with my son, taking him, places up the mountains he hadn't been before. So little things like that. I think a lot of benefits that come out of something so bad, as well as, unfortunately, as we know, there's a lot of lives have been taken as well. But yeah, so I think it's, like I said, so important we can use these technologies as well, and when we do come out of lockdown.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, just while we wrap it up, just talking about lockdown and situations for fathers who are perhaps really feeling the pressure? Maybe they're furloughed, they're not earning as much, perhaps they've lost their work, got a pregnant wife or a new baby. What would be, your top sort of 3 things for them to do to manage?
Sophie, 1 second. Stay there a second. I just got to answer the door. I know. Sorry for this. Oh gosh.
Okay, so I really want to hear what Mark says about this, but I know that a lot of people are coming to me with the worries of not having, obviously, their normal day to day, not being able to kind of escape and have time by themselves as well. But I'm very interested to see what Mark has to say, because obviously, being a mother, it's different for me. But I'm saying how my
Oh,
my partner is dealing with this, and he's, on the one hand, he is very, very worried about his work and the fact that the money isn't coming in as it was before. But yeah, as you say, on the other hand, it's amazing to have him around. For me personally, for him, the connections with the kids are great, but it doesn't. Those things are great, and we can reframe it till the cows come home, can't we? But it doesn't necessarily take away that kind of underlying worry,
yeah.
that uncertainty, that fear factor that's there. So what would you say to somebody in that position who perhaps is really struggling right now?
Yeah, like you said, just open up conversations is
Yeah,
vital. I mean, don't let it manifest. I always say the quicker the help, the quicker recovery. Don't let it to get a point where you need that crisis. So like we mentioned, all good resources online at the moment. It's talk to your partner. It could be as simple as that. And obviously, if you do need somebody to, like, a more specialist service
yeah,
or counsellor, there's counselling directory. There's stuff on Zoom we can do. I think it's a lot of stuff online. As you know, the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, I know we've got
yeah,
loads of resources for mum and dad. And obviously, yeah, just keep on having those conversations, really, I would say.
yeah,
Keep yourself well, fit, eating healthy, all the stuff we know about, trying to get as much sleep as you can. But if you are, get to the point where you can't cope, make sure, phone, they still are the doctors and mental health team. My wife is working for mental health charity now, 4 days a week from home.
good.
So, yeah, we don't talk about the mental health work as much, they're taking these calls. So, services are still open for people during lockdown as well. So, yeah, don't suffer in silence,
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And I think, even if it has mental health in the title, it doesn't need to be, it's not scary. They're there,
No.
to hold
Yeah.
space for you, to hear you out, to hear what you have to say. And there's no obligations. Just because you've called up somebody that is a mental health professional does not mean that
No.
you are going mad. It
No.
doesn't,
No.
it's not a sign of weakness. And
No,
I think
exactly.
that's so important for everybody to understand, isn't it? It really,
Well, like I said, mental health, we all got it, either good or bad, like
yeah,
physical health. You know what I mean? So it's all about looking at, you go to the gym to keep physically fit. You know what I mean? You just use these positive coping skills to keep your mind well as well.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, Mark, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Sorry about that just now.
Oh, it's fine. That's life. It's
I've
life
been waiting for a
lockdown.
package, I have, and it's just come now and up. My walking shoes, it is.
Oh, it's brilliant. Oh, I'm glad. So now you can get
Uh,
up on those hills
oh, yeah.
again
Yeah.
every day. Yeah, and what's just so important, isn't it? I mean, just going out, and even this morning I was out the back door, taking a few breaths, you know, listening to the birds singing, just grounding myself, getting
Oh,
myself ready for the day. And it's these little things. It doesn't have to be big things. It's
no,
little
no,
moments, yeah, that really,
definitely.
that really matter. Um, and I'm so pleased that you like my Beyond Birth guide as well, because you know that is there for dads and partners and anybody as well. So Mark, I am so grateful to you. I really
No,
would
thank
love to
you.
talk to you for the rest of the day, I think. I think we probably could, couldn't we?
I know we talked before we end, but no,
Oh,
I'm well known for talking all day, but
well, I know, and you know, speaking and everything. So if anybody wants you, where can they find you?
yeah, just have a Google Mark Williams Father's Mental Health.
Yeah,
Google International Father's Mental Health Day. I got a memoir, obviously the money goes to charity called the Show Mind Trust. So it's called Daddy Blues, and it's at Mark Williams FMH on Twitter and Facebook, etc.
yeah. Oh, thank you so much. And on Instagram as well. Got it.
Yeah, a little bit of
A
Instagram
little
and
bit of
do
it.
photographs at the moment. My new hobby, photography. So yeah, something different.
Oh yeah. Well, again, I mean, so you can be so mindful when you're taking pictures, can you?
Oh,
It's just it's hypnotic, that zoom lens. You're in
definitely, definitely.
there. All right, I'm going to let you get on with the
Yeah,
rest of
thank
your
you.
day. Thank you so much, Mark.
Take care, Sophie. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye bye for now.
Bye.